The movie begins with a haunting sequence featuring a woman intently watching a blood-soaked court. This woman is the mother of a pair of grotesque mutated twins that she keeps control in her home's basement. Even though they are monstrous, she continues to care for them as her maternal love surpasses any fear or horror she may feel toward them. Things take a turn when a postman arrives at the house and hears a strange, unsettling noise coming from a crypt situated nearby. Driven by curiosity, he lifts the lid and peers inside because he thought he might be assisting someone, and he continues to extend his hand, only to be violently pulled, unknowingly setting the monstrous twins free in the process. Fast forward 3 decades later. The movie shifts this focus to a group of teenagers who've gathered at a specialized camp called Adrenaline. This camp is particularly designed to help young adults overcome their dependency on modern tech on their first night. The teens enthusiastically participate in various camp activities, forming new friendship and connections. However, our main character, Zosha, chooses to distance herself from the group. She's grappling with immense pain and grief, having lost her family in a tragic car accident. The next day brings a new adventure as the teenagers prepare for a hiking trip into the adjacent woods. Either who's in charge of leading the hike takes the opportunity to introduce herself to the group comprised of Kosa, Julek, Nala, Bartek and Daniel with backpacks slung over their shoulders. The young campers set off into the forest, embarking on a journey that promises to be anything but ordinary. As evening descends, the group gathers around a campfire to share stories and experiences. Issa suggests that each camper divulge the reason that they chose to join the camp Adrenaline, and who steps up first reveals to be a well-known gamer and streamer. However, his parents grew concerned about his excessive gaming habits and sent him to the camp in hopes of a lifestyle change when it was Lucia's turn. Seeing the depths of social pain, Issa decides to respectfully skip her, letting the firelight flicker on their expectant faces as they settle into an uneasy silence, unknowingly awaiting the horrors that lurk in the woods around them. Later that night, around midnight, Daniel slips out of his tent and heads to a nearby lake for some time low. He lights up a cigarette and enjoys the solitude, but soon Angela joins them. Initially, they engage in a casual conversation, but as the night deepens, they grow closer and shared intimate moments after their very passionate encounter, and they allow returns to her tent. Daniel, feeling cozy, takes out a hidden phone from inside his sleeping mat and begins to use it. However, unbeknownst to him, one of the monstrous twins has been watching him from the shadows, seizing the opportunity. The creatures wrap Daniel up in his own sleeping mat, dragging them across the forest floor and forcefully slam him against a tree trunk until he dies. When morning light breaks, the group soon notices that Daniel is missing. Issa takes charge, asking who last saw him, and Angela steps up, revealing that she spent some time with him by the lake. They get to the spot and find a cigarette butt in a used car. And meanwhile, Zosha scanning the surroundings and her eyes catch sight of a tree with fresh blood on its trunk. She immediately alerts everyone and a decision is made to split up, and Isla and Bartek will stay back at the campsite in case Daniel returns. While as a Jew, Lake and Zohar set out to search the woods for him. Not long into their search, they stumble upon an old cabin. Inside, they find a photograph hanging on the wall featuring twin boys, the very same twins who've now become mutated monsters. Curiosity leads them to a trap door on the floor, and as they open it, a foul smell of decay fills the air. As it goes down first, with Zohar following closely behind. To their utter horror, they discovered Daniel's mutilated body lying in the basement. Juliet, who had stayed upstairs, hears footsteps approaching and he quickly warns, they shut the trap door and hide in the basement, hearts pounding as they wait to see who or what is coming their way. As the trio of is associated, Juliet cuddled together in the cabin's basement, they hold their breaths, listening to the menacing sound of heavy footsteps drawing nearer to the trap door. Suddenly, the trap door swings open, and without missing a beat as it starts breaking open the bars on the basement window, and the Zohar quickly climbs out, followed by Juleg. Issa, however, hears Daniel's phone ringing from inside his pocket and makes the risky decision to stay behind just as she reaches for the phone. The huge mutant descends into the basement and Issa musters the courage to face the creature head-on. But her bravery is short-lived. Within moments, her decapitated head is hurled out. They run as fast as they can, away from the house, still trembling from the near-death experience. Zozo and Dulak eventually find another cabin. Inside, they meet an elderly man who turns out to be the postman from 30 years earlier, the very same man who had unknowingly released a twin monsters. He lost his legs in the struggle back then, miraculously managed to survive. Hoping for a lifeline, Zosha and Juliet initially ask if they can use his phone to call the police. However, the old man informs them that he doesn't own a phone, and instead he begins to recount the tragic backstory of the monstrous twins. Years ago, there were normal kids living with their single mom in an old house, complete with a pet dog, but everything changed one fateful afternoon when a meteor shower graced the sky. A small piece of the meteorite landed near their home, and the curious twins found the rock and hid a piece of it under their belt. That night, a black, gooey fluid seeped out from the rock, making its way into the twins' bodies and transforming them into the deformed, carnivorous monsters that they are today. Their mother discovered the horrifying transformation when she found them eating their own dog in the basement. Overwhelmed with fear, yet unable to abandon her kids, she chose to lock them up and feed them animals. As years passed, the twins grew more ferocious and tragically ended up consuming their own mom. Upon hearing the horrifying tale from the old postman, Zosha and Yu felt compelled to go back to the mutant twins' house. They believe that they need to retrieve Daniel's phone, hoping that it might be their last resort to call for help. When Zozo and Du Lake were making their desperate plans, Anila and Bartok are lost in conversation, sitting on the edge of a cliff overlooking the woods. Their moment is abruptly shattered when one of the mutants emerges from the shadows and a horrifying instant analyze impaled her head. Skewered on a branch, Bartek recalls in terror and takes off running, and after a heart-pounding sprint, he ends up at a nearby church. The priest, who had conducted a morning prayer at their camp, is there and offers to listen. And just as Bartek starts to say something is off, the priest strikes him on the head, knocking him out. When Bartek regains consciousness, he finds himself tied to a chair, gagged. The priest looks at him with a cool smile and confesses that he dislikes Bartek, and just then the priest hears the sound of a woodchipper mysteriously starting up outside. Curious and cautious, he leaves Bartek alone to investigate, and as he steps outside, one of the meetings appears from behind and lifts the priest off the ground, feeding him into the roaring woodchipper. Back inside the church, Bartek seizes this moment to free himself from the ropes. Meanwhile, all Kosa and Dulac have made it back to the meetings houses. They've come with a quick plan. Juliet will act as a decoy to distract the monsters, giving Zozo the chance to grab Daniel's fall. Before they can put their plan into motion, Kosa hands Ju like a pocket knife for protection and a kiss on the cheek. A small but significant gesture of courage and perhaps a final goodbye. Alerted by Juliet's strategic shout outside, the first mutant twin decides to leave the basement to investigate. This gives Zozo the opening she needs, and she rushes into the basement and successfully retrieves Daniel's phone. And just as she's about to celebrate her minor victory, she realizes she's not alone. As the first twin has returned, it lunges at her, lifting her up into the air, its grip tight around her as if about to crush her. Just then, Ju Leek burst onto the scene, plunging the pocket knife into the monster's side. Sight enraged, the twin throws Kosa aside and turns its attention to Ju Leek, and it moves its grotesque face close to his and savagely bites off his tongue. After a while, Kosa regained consciousness. She finds herself chained in the basement with Ju Leek beside her, clinging to whatever he has left. Desperate to escape, Zola uses Daniel's severed hand to unlock his phone using the fingerprint scanner. She was just about to dial for help, but the phone screen goes blank as the battery's dead. Stranded and desperate, she tries to comfort the severely weakened Dulac. Realizing the severity of the situation, Dulac asks Joshua to end his suffering, and with tears in her eyes, she grips the pocket knife and stabs him, granting Ju like a merciful exit from his torment. In the meantime, upstairs in the same house, the mutant twins are tending to their wounds. The first win is cleaning the stab wound on the side, while the second one heads outside armed with an axe likely to continue its reign of terror. And after a moment of gathering herself, Kosa summons the will to escape. Using the pocket knife, she pries open the chain locked up by Unserved. And though she could try to flee from the house, she decides to instead confront the twins as it had to end. Now spotting a machete under a table in the basement, she takes it and silently makes her way upstairs through the trapdoor. She finds the first asleep on the bed, and with a surge of adrenaline repeatedly she plunges the machete into its chest, doing her best to make sure that it never wakes up again. Elsewhere, the old postman, the survivor from 30 years ago, sits in his cabin, a shotgun is propped up beside him, and he waits with a mix of anticipation and dread for one of the twins to step into his line of sight. He's been waiting for this moment for a long time, and now it looks like his wait may finally be over. As the old postman hears the floorboards of his porch creak under the weight of approaching footsteps, he takes aim and fires through the door. To his horror, he realizes he's mistakenly shot Bartek, and unfortunately, Bartek meets this tragic end. During this time, Kosa manages to make her way to the main road, and she finds a parked police car and an officer and tearfully spells out the entire horrifying tale to the officer. Shaken but eager to help the officer, and invites Lucia inside the car, and they begin to drive away from the forest just as they think they're about to leave this nightmare behind. The cop runs over one of the twins, ignoring his frantic warnings. The officer steps out to confirm the creature's dead, and as it turns out, he is met by a towering figure of the second twin. But before he can act, the monster effortlessly slices him in half. Terrified, quick thinking, Kosa smashes open the back seat window of the police car and climbs onto the driver's seat. And for a moment, he contemplates fleeing. But then the courage overtakes her and she revs the engine and drives back, running over the second twin multiple times until it becomes an unrecognizable heap of dead flesh. And with a heavy sigh of both relief and exhaustion, she drives out of the forest and into the safety of the approaching dawn. And despite the multiple stab wounds inflicted by Kosa, the first mutant wakes up, setting the stage for yet another chapter of terror as the movie comes to its chilling end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching. You should check these recaps.